The modern UFO era officially began on June 24, 1947, when private pilot Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 crescent-shaped objects flying in formation along the slopes of Mount Rainier in Washington state. When he landed and filed his report, a newspaper reporter coined the phrase "flying saucers" to describe what Arnold had seen. But that was really not the beginning. For weeks prior to this event, the American public had witnessed an increasing number of strange objects in the sky. It actually all began during World War II, where Allied and Axis pilots alike reported seeing what became known as Foo Fighters, or disc-shaped objects that followed and outmaneuvered their warplanes. Each side thought the Foo Fighters were the other side's secret weapons. It was at this point that our government began to quietly investigate UFOs, and little known to the public, by 1943 they had already come to some startling conclusions.
We recognize June 24th, 1947 as the day in which the modern UFO era began. Actually, it was long before that. The United States intelligence community was not telling the American people about their concern about the Foo Fighters during the Second World War, beyond the concern that they may be some new device of the Axis powers. When there was an outbreak in '46 of UFOs in Europe, particularly in Sweden, they called them ghost rockets at that time, once again the American public wasn't to learn too much about what was going on there. There was a great desire to find out. The United States Army, under the auspices of General MacArthur, created what was known as the United States Army Interplanetary Phenomena Research Unit. In 1943, MacArthur was able to ascertain from his CIC people that definitely there were interplanetary craft visiting our planet that was observing that world event at that time we called the Second World War. And if that they proved to be hostile, we would have a great dilemma. This fact that I've just told you has never been made public to the American people. They know of the Interplanetary Phenomena Research Unit, but they don't know actually when it began.
Beginning in 1946 and continuing on through 1948, the U.S. military conducted extensive research into the UFO dilemma. Most of this research was done in secret. If the public was informed at all, it was done in a way to deflect growing popular concern while allowing authorities to obtain high-caliber reports from credible witnesses. Those reports of substance were drawn from the testimony of military and civilian pilots, radar operators, law enforcement officials, and scientists. Then, in January of 1948, the Air Force launched its first acknowledged UFO investigation.
With the large number of UFO reports coming into the U.S. Air Force, it was seen that there was a necessity to have a clearinghouse, if you wish, to receive UFO reports and give some contention that they were getting official notice. The Air Force then set up what was called Project Sign. Project Sign came into existence January 22nd, 1948. The press would refer to it as Project Saucer. This was to protect the code name, Sign, from the American public as the code name itself was classified. In February 1949, the report was released on Project Sign stipulating that all UFOs could be explained away by hoaxes, illusions, or misidentification of known phenomena or aircraft seen under unusual conditions. The Air Force released this report knowing fully well that it was incorrect. This did not stop the influx of reports coming in to the U.S. Air Force dealing with UFOs. Getting all these reports, they were finally forced to acknowledge that Project Sign did not die in February 1949, but that it continued. The name had been changed by virtue of Sign being compromised. They changed it to Project Grudge. Thus it would remain Project Grudge until 1952, at which time it was then identified as Project Blue Book. It would continue as Project Blue Book until its demise in December 1969. What was unknown to the American public was that behind the scenes there was a much more broader investigation of UFOs dealing with more reliable sightings. The military sightings, the sightings that was being reported by astronomers, the sightings that was being reported by scientists.
Initially, Project Sign investigated UFOs from the standpoint that they may actually represent interplanetary spacecraft. But shortly thereafter, the project was terminated. The Air Force then adopted an extremely skeptical approach to the UFO dilemma, preferring to explain away as many cases as it could. Although provocative sightings from credible witnesses continued to flood into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book that followed them downplayed their significance to the public. The truly sensitive military investigations continued, hidden from public scrutiny.
We know also from the release of documents from the FBI that Blue Book was never in charge of anything. Very quietly behind the scenes, from the beginning, from 1947 to 1953, January of 1953 to be precise, OSI, Office of Special Investigations, those elite people who came over from the Army CIC, who were doing the initial investigations, were the ones that were in fact monitoring the UFO situation there at Wright-Patterson. Blue Book would get watered down reports, particularly of the really good, significant reports. In January 1953, a unique event took place. The United States Air Force created a very elite unit. This unit would be known as the 4602nd Air Intelligence Service Squadron. General Burgess suggested to Captain Ruppelt that they had a unit, a very unique unit, that was specifically designed to go out and do field investigations. That if this unit was permitted to do the UFO investigations, we would finally be able to get to some pay dirt. The 4602nd had a wartime mission. The wartime mission was the field exploitation of downed enemy aircraft and personnel and the exploitation of enemy documents. It had no peacetime mission. Now, at its conception, it now had a peacetime mission. That peacetime mission was to do the field investigations of unidentified flying objects, to interact with those investigations of military personnel, of highly trained observers such as scientists, astronomers, personnel who were considered highly credible observers, who knew what they were talking about as far as giving accurate data in the observations they made. They also created a new program, unknown to Project Blue Book. Every UFO report going in to the Air Material Command, later to be called the Air Tactical Intelligence Center, first went through a clearinghouse. Operation Blue Fly was now in full operation.
On December 17, 1969, the Air Force announced the closure of Project Blue Book. After more than 20 years of publicly acknowledged research, the Air Force was permanently getting out of the UFO subject. This was done at the recommendation of an Air Force Commission study by the University of Colorado, which suggested that not enough solid evidence existed to warrant continuing investigations. Yet documents obtained by Sergeant Clifford Stone now show that the military continued to study UFOs even after Blue Book closed its doors. A project called Operation Blue Fly played a key role in the government's ongoing secret UFO investigations.
The intent of Operation Blue Fly was the immediate field exploitation and recovery of any enemy or presumed enemy craft that went down in the continental United States or friendly territories overseas, as well as the field exploitation and recovery of advanced technologies. This included the recovery and field exploitation of those items which we called unidentified flying objects.